The real controversy behind 50 Cent's Diddy Netflix documentary. What was left out? Sean Combs, The Reckoning, unveiling the allegations, omitted truths, and hip-hop's day of reckoning. This video provides a detailed, multi-perspective commentary on the Netflix docuseries Sean Combs, The Reckoning, executive produced by Curtis, 50 Cent, Jackson, and directed by Alexandria Stapleton. The docuseries investigates decades of allegations against Sean Diddy Combs, including sexual abuse, trafficking, coercion, and manipulation, as well as his rise to power in the music industry. This video also compiles claims and commentary from 50 Cent, comedian T.K. Kirkland, former bodyguard Gene Deal, singer Jaguar Wright, and other accusers and witnesses. It highlights both the content included in the documentary and significant allegations and stories omitted from the final cut. It also explores the legal context, the reactions of the hip-hop community, and the broader cultural impact of the documentary, while scrutinizing the ethical and editorial choices behind its production. In December 2025, Netflix released a documentary that would send shockwaves through the music industry and beyond. Sean Combs, The Reckoning, executive produced by Curtis, 50 Cent, Jackson, pulled back the curtain on decades of allegations, secrets, and power plays surrounding one of hip-hop's most influential and controversial figures, Sean Diddy Combs. But what did the documentary reveal? What did it leave out? And how did the hip-hop community respond when the silence finally broke? Today, we dive deep into the claims, the controversies, and the cultural reckoning that followed. This is the story behind Sean Combs, The Reckoning, and the voices demanding to be heard. The rise of Diddy and the culture of power. Sean Combs' journey began as an ambitious intern at Uptown Records, quickly rising to found Bad Boy Records in 1993. By the mid-90s, Diddy was not just a producer. He was a kingmaker, shaping the sound and image of hip-hop's East Coast renaissance. But behind the platinum records and the all-white parties, a different story was unfolding, a story of unchecked power, manipulation, and, as some allege, a culture of silence and complicity. The East Coast, West Coast era. The 1990s were marked by the infamous East Coast, West Coast hip-hop rivalry. Diddy and Bad Boy Records stood at the epicenter, with the deaths of Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls casting a long shadow over the industry. Rumors and conspiracy theories swirled for decades. Some, including 50 Cent, would later allege that Diddy's influence extended far beyond music and into the darkest corners of hip-hop's history. The Reckoning, Allegations and Accusers. 50 Cent's role and allegations. Curtis, 50 Cent, Jackson, a longtime rival of Diddy, took the helm as executive producer of The Reckoning. For years, 50 Cent had used his platform to troll, criticize, and at times, directly accused Diddy of everything from exploitation to involvement in unsolved murders. But in this documentary, 50 Cent claimed his motivation was not personal vendetta, but responsibility to expose the truth and give voice to the silenced. He insisted, "I'm telling a story no one else is telling because I don't have the fear that others feel towards him. I'm not afraid at all." The documentary's opening moments stunned viewers. Never-before-seen footage of Diddy, days before his 2024 arrest, strategizing with his legal team, expressing fear and, at times, contempt for the public. Gene Deal, the bodyguard's testimony. Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, emerged as one of the most vocal and controversial witnesses. In interviews and in the documentary, Deal alleged that Diddy's private life was far more complex and darker than the public ever knew. Gene Deal saw things that would make your skin crawl. The parties, the power plays, the way people were used and discarded. There were politicians, celebrities, even preachers at those freak-off parties. And Diddy filmed everything. Deal claimed that Diddy maintained a romantic relationship with Bad Boy co-founder Kirk Burroughs and that coercion, blackmail, and violence were used to maintain control. He also alleged that Diddy's mother, Janice Combs, was involved in or at least aware of some of the more sordid aspects of his son's lifestyle, a claim Janice has vehemently denied. Kirk Burroughs, the co-founder's lawsuit. Kirk Burroughs, once Diddy's trusted partner, filed lawsuits alleging repeated sexual harassment, physical aggression, and forced compliance with degrading acts. He claimed Diddy used violence, blackmail, and financial extortion to force him out of bad boy entertainment, costing him millions and leading to years of blacklisting and hardship. Kirk Burroughs was a victim on multiple levels, not just as an employee but as a man. The abuse was personal, professional, and sexual. And when I tried to fight back, I was erased. Diddy's legal team dismissed these claims as frivolous, pointing to previous lawsuits that were thrown out. But Burroughs' story echoed a pattern described by many others, a cycle of seduction, exploitation, and retaliation. Jaguar Wright, The Insider's Perspective. Jaguar Wright, a singer and outspoken critic of the industry, provided context for the culture of silence that allowed Diddy's alleged behavior to persist. She described a world where power, money, and fear kept victims quiet, and where speaking out could mean career suicide. Jaguar Wright wasn't just Diddy. The whole industry protected him. People knew, but nobody wanted to be the one to say it out loud. Now, finally, the truth is coming out. T.K. Kirkland, The Comedian's Confession. Comedian T.K. Kirkland brought a different perspective, one of regret and reflection. He recounted his own legal troubles with Diddy, including a 1998 robbery and a near involvement in the 1999 Club New York shooting case. Kirkland described a culture where self-sabotage and reckless behavior were normalized, and where Diddy's influence could make or break lives. T.K. Kirkland was doing dumb stuff. I was rich, but I was sabotaging myself. And I saw how Diddy could turn on you in a second. The universe will humble you, no matter how big you think you are. Other accusers and witnesses. The list of accusers grew to include artists, assistants, romantic partners, and even anonymous victims. Cassie Ventura, Don Richard, Cat Passion, Rodney Lil Rod Jones, and many others described patterns of abuse, manipulation, and coercion that spanned decades. Some alleged being drugged and assaulted at Diddy's infamous parties. Others spoke of being blackballed, threatened, or forced into silence. The allegations ranged from sexual assault and trafficking to physical violence and psychological abuse. The documentary, what was shown, what was omitted. The power of unseen footage. One of the documentary's most explosive elements was the inclusion of never-before-seen footage of Diddy in the days before his arrest. Shot by a videographer Diddy himself had hired, the footage showed a man unraveling, paranoid, desperate, and, at times, contemptuous of the very public that had made him a star. Diddy's team claimed the footage was never authorized for release, calling its use reckless and exploitative. Netflix and the filmmakers insisted they had obtained it legally, but the controversy only fueled the documentary's impact. Omitted content and editorial choices. Despite its breadth, The Reckoning faced criticism for what it left out. Some accusers and insiders claimed that key stories, evidence, and perspectives were omitted, either for legal reasons, narrative focus, or fear of retaliation. Director Alexandria Stapleton defended her approach, emphasizing the need for balance, sensitivity, and, above all, safety for those who chose to speak. But the omissions raised questions about bias, conflicts of interest, and the limits of documentary storytelling. Legal context and outcomes. The federal trial. The allegations against Diddy culminated in a federal trial, United States versus Sean Combs, in the Southern District of New York. The charges included racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and violations of the Mann Act. Over 7 weeks, jurors heard harrowing testimony from Cassie Ventura, anonymous witnesses, and a parade of former employees and associates. The prosecution painted a picture of a criminal enterprise built on money, power, and violence. The defense argued that the relationships were consensual, if toxic, and that the accusations were motivated by greed. The verdict. On July 2, 2025, the jury delivered a split verdict. Diddy was found guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, but acquitted of the more serious charges of racketeering and sex trafficking. The verdict sparked debate. Some saw it as a partial victory for survivors and a sign that even the most powerful could be held accountable. Others argued that the justice system had failed to grasp the complexities of coercion and abuse, especially in intimate relationships. Sentencing and aftermath. Diddy was sentenced to 50 months in prison. As he began his sentence, dozens of civil lawsuits remained pending, and the music industry braced for further revelations. The fallout extended to Diddy's family, business empire, and legacy. Some called for a presidential pardon. Others insisted that true accountability had only just begun. Section 5. Reactions from the hip-hop community and beyond. Industry insiders speak out. The release of The Reckoning ignited a firestorm of reactions. Some former Bad Boy associates and industry insiders expressed relief and vindication. Others questioned the motives behind the documentary, pointing to 50 Cent's long-standing feud with Diddy. For many, the documentary was a cultural earthquake, forcing the industry to confront its own complicity in enabling abuse and silencing victims. Social media and public discourse. Social media exploded with outrage, disbelief, and, at times, dark humor. Memes about Diddy's parties, freak-offs, and the cult of celebrity went viral, while survivors and advocates used the moment to call for systemic change. The documentary became a touchstone for conversations about power, privilege, and the long-overdue reckoning facing the music industry. Critics praised The Reckoning for its comprehensive research and unflinching approach, though some found it relentless and exhausting. The series was lauded for giving voice to survivors, but also criticized for its narrative choices and the shadow of 50 Cent's personal animus. Ethical considerations and documentary production. The director's dilemma. Director Alexandria Stapleton faced daunting challenges, balancing the need for truth with the safety of participants, navigating legal threats, and maintaining editorial independence in the shadow of 50 Cent's involvement. We wanted to make something for people like us, but that could also speak to a broader audience. The nuances and details were often overlooked in past projects. This time, we wanted to pull back the layers and understand that there was more to the story. The documentary's credibility was both bolstered and complicated by 50 Cent's role. While his fearlessness allowed the project to move forward, critics questioned whether personal animosity colored the narrative. Diddy's team accused Netflix and the filmmakers of using stolen footage and producing a shameful hit piece. Netflix maintained that all materials were obtained legally and that no one was paid to participate. The legacy of The Reckoning and the future of hip-hop. A turning point for the industry. Sean Combs' The Reckoning marked a watershed moment for hip-hop and the broader entertainment world. For the first time, the industry was forced to reckon with its own history of abuse, silence, and complicity. The documentary inspired calls for greater accountability, transparency, and support for survivors. It also raised difficult questions. How do we separate art from the artist? Can an industry built on power and bravado truly change? The ongoing reckoning. As Diddy serves his sentence and the lawsuits continue to mount, the reckoning is far from over. The music industry and the culture at large must decide what comes next. The truth is rarely simple, but silence is no longer an option. The story of Sean Combs is not just about one man. It's about the culture that made him, the silence that protected him, and the voices that finally broke through. As the music industry faces its day of reckoning, one question remains. Will we listen? Will we learn? And will we change?